A lot of legs over here.
This is the 19th season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, Aftco, Pro Guide Batteries, X-Zone Lures, Shoreline Boat and RV Repair, Spro, Gamakatsu, Big Bite Baits, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to a very special edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. Yes, we are on location. I have no idea what town we're in. That would have been helpful.
Golden Valley, Minnesota.
Polish Pete, Luke Lowe. We're in Golden Valley, Minnesota. The only man, like I always introduce, who's ever fished a Bassmaster Classic is actually manning the StreamYard. We'll probably get Trevor in here in a second, but we are live from, is this the headquarters?
This is the headquarters.
This is the headquarters for Omnia Fishing in Minnesota. You guys have heard about it. You've seen about it. A lot of great feedback, at least on my end, of people have been like, man, we're learning about Omnia. Great feedback, great response. Love ordering stuff from that. So thank you for inviting me up to do a BTL from your studio.
Yeah, this is fun. We were excited when Trevor told us that you'd be swinging through. We know you're fishing the St. Jude, which is an awesome event, and we're happy supporters of that. So it was just perfect that you wanted to do this here. We have our own little studio here, so it worked out great.
It is. One of the cool things I've gotten to do this year with all the travel is I got to be live in Frank's studio. Yeah. He's got a little nook that his wife lets him have there, and then also Travis Manson of Smallmouth Crush, who I think he sold a few smallmouth baits in,
yes, he has.
in his day.
Yes.
He's probably one of the most influential smallmouth guys when it comes to that part of the country as far as moving product with the Great Lakes Finesse and the Beast Coast jigs?
Without a doubt. I mean, to both of those brands that you just mentioned are easily two of our top 5 fastest growing brands.
Yeah. When I had a chance to stay with him for the Open earlier this year, it's amazing how hard he works and how meticulous to detail he is. Like you would think, he's got him dialed in smallmouth. He doesn't have to do it. And he's going to different parts of the lake and he's calling up the companies and being like, dude, I'm down to my last 50 jigs. Do you know how many of these I go through a day? You got to send me more. And he's calling up his clients, trying to figure out where they want to go. Like he is all in on that guiding up there on Thousand Islands. And now I think he's getting into duck hunting, ice fishing, salmon and walleye.
Really?
Yeah. He just got a Lund.
Really?
A tiller steer Lund and a kayak.
Wow, he's going all day.
Oh, and he got snowmobiles and a trailer to haul it all in for ice fishing this year.
Wow, you better hope they get ice.
Yeah. Do you guys do a lot of ice fishing stuff?
We don't. We know that it's something that we'll get into in the future, but it's such a risky business for a startup like us, and we're growing so fast year over year that if we bet on ice, it takes up a lot of space, and a lot of years we don't get really good ice. So those years you're stuck with that inventory. And so we've really played it safe in that realm for a while, but this year you'll see us step it up a little bit, but down the road, once we're fully established in a large facility and all that stuff, I think that's when we'll double down on.
When I was up here 2 years ago for my first ice fishing experience, where I learned what safe ice was.
Yeah.
And that if it's like cracking, that's a good sign because it means that it's making ice.
Correct.
And then I had the little spiky things in case I went in because I didn't have a float suit. What are those called?
Ice picks.
Ice picks. I went fishing with you for a day.
Yep.
2 years ago. Did we do that? That was the backwater deal.
Yep. That was with Bart and the Chronicles.
Yeah,
guys.
that was a fun day. Where was I going with that? Oh, but we went to the ice fishing shop, like some of the ice fishing stuff up here.
Oh yeah.
It's like more complex than bass fishing.
There are people that spend way more money on ice than they do on open water fishing. As far as like even compared to a tournament bass fisherman, there are guys with massive ice houses with multiple TVs in them and all that stuff, and stay out there for a month.
Now Bart was drill 1 billion holes and move 5 miles outside with sleds pulling it. It was not a relaxing experience. It was more like I would say like a tournament day where you're trying to establish a pattern and you're just like boom, 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 just like point hopping.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it if you're really after them to catch them. But I'm more into that sit in the fish house and drink beer thing and wait till they come through on the cameras.
You're diehard into that, aren't you? Or is that just something you enjoy doing every now and then?
I don't know. Those guys don't sit in the house at all. They just burn through like 2 or 3 drill batteries a time and drill like 500 holes until they find them.
Yeah,
like they're
it's crazy.
full on soaking wet and sweat, walking around in like negative 20 degrees.
And then the even crazier thing is, like, if Randy Blockett came up and ice fished with him,
he'd be so mad.
Sitting in the truck, livid.
He'd be so angry.
A lot of the holes are just drilled for forward-facing sonar to see where the school is. He'd walk out on the ice, he'd take one look at it, and he'd be like, "I'm out. I'm going to be sitting in this house, eating some beef jerky."
That's we were saying that a lot after Gussie's first win on the Tennessee River there in Tellico, and then obviously his classic win. That there's nobody fishing in the front of a bass boat that's fished more straight up and down with their electronics.
Because of ice fishing?
Because he's guided it, he's lived it, and he literally sits over a hole for 6 months out of the year and fishes straight up and down his whole life.
I never even thought of that. So he basically was practicing to win the Bassmaster Classic
his
the
whole
whole time.
Yep.
His whole life. Yep. Through 6 feet of ice.
I know that when Christie won on Hartwell, they had come out with the FF Minnow, or were coming out. It was a I guess a prototype, kind of under the radar at the time. But that whole winter before, I fished the 10 killer winter jackpots. Yeah. And Christie would show up to every single one, and he would always run down to the lower end by the dam. Yeah. And it was very, I guess, un-Christie like.
Well, absolutely.
But then in hindsight, when you look back on it, and he smashed him, he was catching him on that Demiki style. Mm-hmm. You're sitting there and you're like, dude, that dude wasn't there to fish the jackpot. He was practicing for Hartwell this entire time and getting comfortable, as a Garmin guy, knowing what the forward-facing technology would do and being like, I need to go catch pressured smallmouth on 10 killer to simulate what's going to happen at Hartwell. Then he went right in that gut and did the same thing he'd been doing 3 days a week at 10 killer for the previous 2 months. It was really cool to kind of see that come full circle.
Yeah. There's the people that have put the time in and committed to it are obviously showing the fruits of that labor. I myself committed to it about last week.
Really?
So I'm a little behind the curve. And it didn't go well my first go around, but then I got a day with Seth and it made me feel a lot better. I'm more confident now. Yes, but it might have been just
Seth's
the fact that I was
interesting takes on it.
Yeah, he has. But he's committed to it. He's and he's getting good at it. And so it gave me a little confidence too to get out there and monkey with it with somebody who's actually catching them with it.
So based on what you've seen with what Seth's doing, do you think there's going to be like a renaissance of these guys who I don't want to say had a down year, but got out caught? I think is the best way to say it. Like they still came in with good bags, but 16 or 17 got out caught by 18 or 19 on St. Clair and a lot of fishes. Do you think you'll see a lot of these guys like my age, that mid 30s, who thought we were all up on everything, and then like I got smoked in the open on it to kind of recommit, dedicate, and then come back around and be on the same level as the 20 somethings? Or it has nothing to do with age. It just seems like the younger
it's just
guys
a commitment
are the ones
to that
who
technology.
committed.
Yeah, you got it. I don't think that anybody has an option anymore. I think that writing's on the wall. There's no more debating, like, hey, I'm just gonna ride it out, wait till this wave kind of cools off and it doesn't get. Look what just happened with the college stuff. Look at where it's going. It's commit or drown.
Yeah, I think just like Seth, those guys know now that like they have to do it. So right now they're all the ones practicing for next year so that they can even out the playing field. But being out on the water with Seth yesterday, he was pretty committed to doing it. So.
Yeah.
All right, hear me out on this. This is something that I've had in my head that I just don't know if the market is big enough for the R&D and the money that it would take. But Mark Jeffries hosted the show for 18 years. His son's a pilot, flies for American now. So all through high school and college, whenever Mark was home, Mark Jr., it's Mark, that's confusing. His son's name's Mark too as well. Yeah. But he would be in his room on the flight simulator. Yeah. And he would do cross-country flights, and he'd come out and get a drink and stuff, and it would be on like autopilot, and he would land at actual airports and take off at actual airports and accrue points. And it was basically like, this thing was like a flight simulator in his house.
No kidding.
Is there a market? Is there enough? Can we not have a forward-facing sonar simulator? So, like, let's say you live in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And it's
Frozen.
icy 7 months out of the year. You have a foot pedal, you have a trolling motor shaft, you have some sort of sensors or something, but can you not do the exact same thing as a live scope simulator where you're actually looking at a 10 to 12 inch Garmin, Lowrance, Humminbird screen, whatever, and picking out targets and hitting distances and scoping and identifying to where you are. They do it in NASCAR, don't they? Have
absolutely
an IndyCar, and they do golf. They do it in everything else. My only thing is the market big enough for something like that?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's big enough for it, and I just don't know, how, because so much of it now that you've got this crop of kids that we've all seen coming into the sport that are just awesome at it already. They've grown up on it or whatever. A lot of it, at least in our region up here that I'm noticing, isn't so much the people's inability to see them or anything like that. It's how to actually catch them and fit. Because as you know, even myself, I've been able to stumble onto them and I can see them. It's just that commitment to actually learning how to fish your baits properly and get them to go on forward facing sonar. So I think without the ability to catch them, practicing with it, I think it'd be tough to get a big commitment out of the manufacturers, because I don't know if there's a big call to action for it. But what you're saying is intriguing, because I could sure use the practice sitting here in the office some days.
I mean, I think the other thing with northern guys is what they get is there's so many different species down in our lakes.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
That guys are really able to learn how fish act with baits to get them to be able to bite to catch them. So it's like you're out on Minnetonka and there's 4-pound largemouth swimming around with 23-inch walleyes, and they look pretty similar on live scope.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of just another way that you can learn.
But even to his point, now that you're saying it,
you could learn
first
that
I thought
in a
about it. Yeah,
simulator.
the simulator was helping
You could tell, like, is that a school of
identify.
perch?
Yeah.
I mean,
You
they're
have
living in
different
the same
fisheries
spot.
that have the different fish on it and how they do it. So you could, like, go scope the lower end of Grand. You could scope Mille Lacs. I mean, you'd have a different.
Yeah, it's an interesting theory, and I definitely think that, I mean, I need it. I know that much, but
no more Xbox. You're just simulator scoping.
Like I said, I'm not, this isn't a good or bad deal, but I don't think I've ever talked about that, but that's been in my head. Like, I'm sure I'm sure there's a lot of guys who have thought about that, because I mean, it is, you say video game fishing. Well, why don't you turn it into
a video game?
Actual video game? And I think a lot of it also, and then you did it as muscle memory with the foot pedal.
He was talking about that to me the other day.
Actually, I have an Ultrex.
Yep.
And I was in Seth's boat looking at his a little bit, and he's running the power pole.
Yeah,
it's so different.
Yep.
Like, it's my muscle memory with my foot to my casting to with what I'm looking at with my trolling motor. I'm just so used to it with the Ultrex, and then going on Seth's.
But you were even telling me, because I struggled immensely, as I pointed out, my first day out, really committed to, like, I wasn't going to stop. I was not just going to stare at everyone's. You were saying how many times you keep taking your foot off the pedal. Oh yeah. And it's like, that's all I did. And as soon as you said it, I'm like, oh yeah, 100%. I would tap the pedal, put it somewhere and step off of it right away. And you were telling me it was a big thing to learn, to keep your foot on the pedal the whole time. And that
micro adjustments.
Yeah, exactly.
Because as the boat's going one way, you have the fish going the other way. And then in order to actually focus on catching the fish and read the fish's behavior, you have to do that second nature.
Yeah.
It has to be like, you know how hard it is to fish docks if you don't, if you have to look at the arrow on your trolling motor. It's like playing hockey, right? So like in my last year I played, I got moved from center to wing.
Yeah.
Because I missed 2 weekends for bass fishing tournaments, which doesn't go over well for the team, right?
Yeah.
And I moved to wing, and I'd always just been a natural center. But then when you move to wing, you start thinking, like, chip the puck out, gap with your D-man, when to pinch down, off the glass. And when you start thinking that stuff, you're freaking done. You're a fourth liner instantly because there's that split second and you have. I think it's the same way with fishing and what we're seeing.
Yeah. No, it was a great point.
You got to be like that with basketball. You're D1 Minnesota Gopher athlete, right? Like, I mean, is that the same way? Like when you're shooting and stuff, if you're actually having to think about anything, like that's when you start clunking them.
Oh yeah. If you're thinking about it before you're shooting it, and just whether you should shoot or not, or trying to think about your mechanics, it's your percentage is going to go way down. It's the same thing.
Which is time on the water.
Yeah. It's just a lot of time on the water, which I got to fix.
Yeah, back to your point about the foot pedal. It's like the resistance of each foot pedal is so much, I feel like, different. Like the speed that the heads can rotate.
Yeah.
You're trying to follow a fish as it moves, but the wind's blowing this direction. The head of the boat's going this way. You're trying to follow the fish. Your foot just gets used to the resistance of the pedal. So, I mean, it was different switching, but once you've time on the water, once you have time on the water with your whole unit, I mean, I think that's just what it is. You just got to, it's the kids that are out there in the opens that are just, they have all that time on the water. Like they are committing to spending that time doing
Makes sense.
their thing.
From a business perspective, then, I mean, you are Omnia Fishing, you do sell baits. Do you, how has this impacted bait sales? Like, is this the Alabama rig all over again, where people who make things that aren't forward facing are like, it's going to ruin us?
It's interesting. It's interesting to watch even big manufacturers, mid-sized manufacturers that are so reliant on historical sales data, really getting frustrated with the fact that a lot of historical baits are not moving
so
at
like
the same
what's
rate.
down? Like, are you allowed to say that?
Yeah,
like
crankbaits, right? Crankbaits was, I mean, it was a tough one for us. And we started, imagine we had really small budgets. We were really trying to be smart and strategic. So I'd do all the homework I could do to get the best 6 colors of pick a crankbait company. I'm not going to say anybody in particular, but like, you get the best 6 colors and best 6 sizes, right?
Let's say
do your homework.
Yeah, that's a crazy
Strike King or a Rapala or any of them, 6 cents
Scro,
even.
all that.
So you pick all your 6 best selling, and I could get that info. I had enough friends in the industry. I could dig it all out and get the info and find it. But we had to go super wide to get the consumers to even pay attention to those 6 colors. But it was hard. I'd get those 6 best colors, and we had a little bit of success with it. But once we had a full assortment of crankbaits, people would start buying them more. It was easier for the consumer to commit. I don't know what it is psychologically to most people that they want to get a selection of 50 different colors and 50 different sizes, but they're going to buy the 6 colors that everybody, but that's just the way the consumer mindset is. And now we're seeing, is it smart to start and drill that back and get back down to a smaller assortment?
Like if I'm going to throw a crankbait, it's going to be it's not going to be as often. It's going to be a sexy shad. It's going to be a chartreuse powder blueback. I'm not going to carry 6 boxes of those because now I've got Demiki stuff and I've got 3 jerkbait boxes.
Exactly right. I think you're looking at your tournament anglers, your hardcore, your avid anglers, just like me, that just fish quite a bit, but I'm not even a avid tournament angler, but just a hardcore angler. I don't want to put all that stuff in my boat anymore because I know, you know, I'm going to be, if I ended up on a crankbait bite, it'd be a weird deal right now that if I ended up on that bite. So I'm going to have 3 of the best colored crankbaits in my boat, and that's about it.
Jim was saying is this data feedback sales related to forward facing sonar at this time like that? I mean, are you just there's no like data to prove like because of forward facing sonar crankbait sales are down, but I mean it's very correlated. Like is that deductive reasoning?
I think so, because I mean we have a data scientist that works here at Omnia Fishing. I'm taking him out on the lake this afternoon, a full-time data scientist. Our current algorithms, the way we look at things, don't show us that it's forward-facing sonar. But to your point, if I look at the baits that are going trending up, the durables that are trending up, electronics that are trending up, it's clearly deductible that it's forward-facing sonar that's driving a change in the tackle buying business. You know.
So crankbaits, what else?
I think as far as stuff
that's down.
I would even say, and this is a sad one too, for it's a tough one for us to adjust to, but we've adjusted pretty well. It's even durable sales. Durables in our world, we call durables the rods and reels, things of that nature. Consumables are the things that you run out of and you got to get more of, like baits and stuff like that. Durable sales, it's shifting. You're not seeing the mad dash for the new jig rod from a manufacturer the way you used to, or frog rods and things of that nature that you still sell them, but you're not getting the same. And I think a lot of that has to do that's twofold. That's a lot of, pandemic buying that was happening. I mean, every one of us that's a $200 rod and down kind of guy bought $300 rods because I don't know why, but we all thought we got rich or something when we were sitting home. And so that dollar has shifted, and a lot of people are starting to look at getting into spinning rod fishing. That's why I was asking you when you got here this morning, what are you seeing? Because that's the investigations we're doing now is like what endurables is going to take off because of the shift in people's, and no one's really come forward and really knocked down a technique specific line of rods and things like that for specifically forward facing sonar, where you've seen the consumable market shift there. I mean, you see what Sixth Sense is doing. Every single manufacturer is adjusting and going with soft plastics and things like that to adjust, but no one's done it in the durables world yet with rods and reels. I think you're going to see this BFS stuff you hear everybody talking about.
That's the bait finesse system.
You got it. A lot of the people uncomfortable fishing with a spinning rod all the time are going to start trying a lot of that casting equipment for pitching and fishing smaller, more finesse style baits. I still recommend trying a spinning reel if you don't landing a 5-pounder on a bait caster could be interesting on 6-pound test. But anyway, I think we're seeing that shift now. I think the industry's having to adjust as we speak.
That's really interesting. I never thought about that because a lot of times too, if you're using primarily 2 or 3 baits that are offshore for suspended fish or fish on stumps or something, you don't need a pile of 35 rods next to you like you used to see a lot like everyone did, because it's either going to be this one, or this one. But then, like you said, durables, which I'd never heard that before. That's interesting because there's no one, I've not heard of like a forward facing sonar rod, but the majority of guys that are offshore, this is just my opinion and what I've seen, have gone to a little bit longer rod with a faster tip and a stiffer backbone in it.
Interesting.
For more accurate, and then also a lot, and it kind of depends. So like at Wheeler Lake where guys were pitching stumps, if you're pitching the edges of brush pile, you want a longer, heavier offshore rod. Okay. But as a whole, you're talking open water fish that you're wanting to fight. So there's a very specific kind of longer, little bit of backbone so you can reel into them because you're often out and down with lighter line, and then a super fast tip for those very accurate casts, 45 feet, 56 feet, 60 feet.
Gotcha. That's super interesting. This is why this conversation is been exciting, one that me and Luke have been having a lot with a lot of influential anglers that we know, because I've heard your way and I've heard the complete and total opposite from a lot of the Japanese anglers and people like that.
Well, they've been smoking everybody.
Super lightweight and being able to manipulate their baits a lot more with a lot less fatigue and stare at their scope and make accurate pitches.
So that's Demiki. That's this hover strolling. That's fishing closer to the boat. I'm talking more still, I guess, redneck forward facing sonar with a 6-inch robo worm on 12 and 14-pound test, because those fish are hitting it out of reaction. So I'm doing the zoom, they bite it or they don't. They're actually enticing that fish into bite, which I don't do a lot of. I mean, I've got that core tackle hover stroller and some of the stuff from Gamakatsu and the little baits, Demiki stuff, but I haven't like unlocked that. Apparently I need to go lighter and shorter.
Yeah. I mean, I think what we're looking at, and this is just my assumption early as we're doing our homework on it, is it's not so much like the way it was where a long rod for a long cast, as much as it's where are you fishing that bait in the water column. If you're fishing it up super high in the water column, do you want such a long rod? Because you're constantly manipulating that bait and kind of having to stare at your screen. You don't want to look at your rod. You don't want to look at anything else. You want to be staring at your screen and manipulating that bait. So shorter, light power rods that are really, really non-fatiguing if you're overworking the bait somewhere up in the water column. I think that's going to get popular. And then to your point, if you're throwing way out there and sinking it 30 feet down, you're going to need some backbone and some length to clean up that line and get a good hook in that fish. So that's where your longer rods will come into play. But I think that's the next thing we're going to see is people start adjusting to that kind of stuff.
Interesting. What are you on? Have you adjusted your spinning rods and stuff yet?
I was like you. I like a 7.6 longer rod for getting it down to the bottom on far casts and get a good hook in them. But I don't know. I could see the really short, like a 6.3 rod doing that mid water column, fishing something with live scope. I could see me converting.
I mean, you look at what Koi has done and Taco.
Taco
Ito and some of those guys. Like, I mean, you can't argue with success.
No, I know. That's the thing. And they have been notoriously protective of that stuff so far. I've got to talk to people that have been trying to film them, and I've tried to film them, and people, and they have been very tight-lipped and very secretive about it.
Which is ironic because they film freaking everything.
That's exactly
They
right.
have 9, like the Japanese anglers are the most documented anglers on tour. Like they do a very good job of documenting all the different lures. And after every day, like Coda was at the last open and he had a film crew there with him.
Yep. But I've jumped in the boats with them, and there's a lot of covering stuff up, and there's a lot of baits being shown that I know I definitely in the play, in the playbook. They were out there. They got a play or two in the game, but they were not the dominant thing being fished. So there's a lot to be unlocked still. And I think that's the funnest thing for all the people that are on board with the changing with the change in the industry, watching this forward facing sonar thing coming on like way. There's so much to be unlocked. There's so much green grass in front of us to learn more stuff and find funner stuff to do with it, and more techniques, more baits, more durables, more stuff to come. That's the best part about it, I think. And I do think, as you've heard all over the place, it is causing a shift in certain bodies of water. I've even heard that up here with as much less pressure as we get in the North Country compared to the South. We're even seeing lakes up in the North Country get affected by the pressure from forward facing and watching techniques change and people get back to the bank or having to shut their electronics off. Was Mille Lacs
the first fishery that you really noticed? I've talked to so many guys who are like, dude, we used to have these rocks for 20 years that you could roll up on, and if you got within 20 feet of it, and now like, were you saying that on the last time you were on the show? I don't think someone was saying that on the show.
I think Trevor might have pointed that out.
Was that you, Trevor?
I haven't
just say that. Take it. It's a good point.
I haven't put my time in on Mille Lacs since Seth moved out of there. We used to spend tons of time there, but that's exactly right. You just have names for rocks and just go catch them on it, and that's not the case anymore. But I even, hearing it from the multi-species anglers and muskie world and stuff, there are fish that if they shine that fish is gone. It's a ghost. They're starting to pick up on a lot of it, so that it's the more it gets out there, the more you're going to have to see people's techniques and things change. There will be a day, I think, where that's a better practice tool than it is even a Derby Day tool. Which that hasn't happened yet, but I could see
where
that.
you're fighting with practice, you don't want to hit them with the beam.
Yep, where you're having to shut it down.
I need to get someone on from Garmin to actually talk about what the hell that's actually shooting out and how those fish feel that. And because there's obviously the transducer, and I think we're thinking of the forward facing like the which it is not. It's something different about it.
It's totally different.
I've also heard the theory that the fish are actually they're not feeling the beam of the forward facing sonar. They're relating now being able to hear the 2D that
with just getting caught
caught. So if it gets with it all within their range, that's where, so you're seeing a lot of guys that are shutting everything off except their forward facing.
Yeah.
I can see it. I feel like I've seen it in a couple instances. I was just up at Vermilion, and there was a ton of guys just muskie fishing, and all they do is just drive around with the scope, see one, cast at it, pretty much just catch it. But then after a while, you see a bunch of muskies swimming around, like not a bunch, but you see giant fish that are muskies swimming around, and they just gone as soon as you put it on them.
Yep.
And then,
but is that because they are associating that beam with that, or the noise of the boat with it? Because now, a couple of times they heard it, they got stung.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I think we're all learning this together. It's just going to be one of those things where, it's funny. It feels like to us that have been around it a while that it's been around for 10 years or something like that. It really if you really look at its ascension, it's really come on super strong and become a tool in most anglers' boats just in the last couple of years.
Scott was the first one that I saw that really utilized it on the FLW tour in 17 and 18.
Yeah. Wow. That's wild.
Yeah. But I would say I got it in the fall in 19 at the Toyota, specifically for the Toyota Championship. And I'd say 15 to 20% of the guys had it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that long ago where you're like, God, I wish people would stop talking about it.
I know. Yeah.
And now it's like, you don't have live scope.
Yeah. I remember the last year I fished the full circuit of the Denny's up here in Minnesota. All of us were fighting over 360. 360 was like all we would talk about.
Yeah.
And it'd be like, if you don't have it, you're blind. You're an idiot. So we all had to have three. And it was all anybody talk. There was a team that had hand-controlled deucer pole, on the front of their boat, and they whipped us that year. Yeah. And that was like the last year. Then now it's like you walk down the docks and it's just forward-facing.
That's a really great point. So I did the all the media for the Toyota Texas Bass Classic back in the day, top 15 FLW, top 15 PAA, top 15 Bass, and Keith Combs was very dominant in that. And I can't believe I haven't thought of this before now. I vividly remember him going, dude, I got this thing. It's 360. Yeah. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I thought, and it was on Conroe.
Yeah.
He's like, I thought I knew where this brush pile was. He goes, and I was casting a plug to it. He goes, and this thing spins around. And he's like, it's like side imaging, but you can see in front of the boat. And it was, I'd never heard of it.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I saw the brush pile off to my right, and I cast and I caught a 6. And he's like, and then I went to all my spots and realized there's so much more. And I could cast the little pieces of brush.
Yep.
And that, I mean, he won using that technology, dominant, and so did so many other guys. I wonder why there wasn't a backlash like, oh, those guys are seeing.
Yeah, that certainly wasn't. I never heard backlash on that.
But that was 100% what it was. He had technology that no one else had that could see out in front of the boat to where he could cast it.
Yeah. And now it's something everybody can. I mean, that's the thing to me that gets me. As much as I'm old school and I'm struggling with it immensely just because of the sheer, I'm more of a fun fisherman, and destination angler. I haven't had that much fun doing it yet. I would rather go do it. Yeah. And that's the thing is, like I said, the tale of two stories. Go by myself, suck, go with Seth, pretend that I'm really good at it. And it was really fun, like you said. But people talking about the barrier to entry to it being the expense of it. If you really look at the people having so much success with it, it actually eliminates a lot of costs and other things that you could go without if you just go with that and get good at it. You're going to be way more competitive with a forward-facing sonar on your boat than you are. Yeah, housing, yes.
All you have to have is scope.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that's the thing is, I would talk to the guys that work here. All of us, are looking at the expenses of things going up in the world, the inflation on everything. And it's like, man, you could really go without, other things on your boat that you used to have to be competitive.
Tackle.
Yeah. Or tackle. Yeah. Drill your tackle.
What about
down.
The terminal tackle? I wanted to get that in with you because I feel like for a company like you, that's where you could really make big strides is to be on the cutting edge of the terminal tackle and the hooks and the weights.
I mean, it's helped us out a lot.
Brand new jig heads.
Yeah, we've done really well. I'm proud of the buying team here for that side of things. They've jumped on trends really fast and jumped in with a bunch of cool manufacturers in that. As you can imagine, the revenue from it's not super huge. So it's not as sexy looking at a spreadsheet at the end of the year. And you're looking at your boss, be like, man, we got 1 billion orders on this stuff, but it was a pack of hooks and a pack of jigs.
So you don't make as much
you're
not on the terminal stuff.
The margins and but the consumers have found us to be a source to have a lot of that cool stuff and to get it in. What's been hard, I think, is the manufacturers keeping up with the demand because those things are so small and there's not a lot of revenue behind it. They can't buy, millions of dollars worth of jig heads and have them sitting there in stock waiting for you to pick away at it. So a lot of times there's gaps in the availability in it. But as you mentioned, like Core Tackle, those guys are killing it. Like tons of consumers have found us because of that.
That's Matt. For those who don't know, we talk about Core. That's Matt Steffen and Johnny Schultz. That's like their little pet project. It's not a major company. That's those two.
They have been an excellent partner so far. They've hooked us up every time they can get inventory. They get it over here, and we just burn through it. It's clearly something that's working. And yet that's the funnest thing, I guess, from sitting in this seat is watching things land. All of it seems to go right away, but you get to see what's actually working by the reorder rate. You know what I mean? When it keeps coming and you see that the same consumer has bought it now the third time, and it's like, well, that thing works. That thing works for real. And that's one of the products that clearly works for real because we've turned it a bunch of times and it keeps going. So Ichikawa's got an outbarb jig head that, whether you
are you capable of pulling that up, Trevor? Or is that we're working. So like usually wait, you got to go back to the screen. I think we're still good. Oh, it doesn't show. That's just on that.
The barb is actually on the outside, like the Mega Bass hooks on their treble hooks. So if you look at cold water fishing, fish that are swiping at baits, things of that nature, and you're in that situation with light line and a light rod, you're able to
Wow.
You can actually hook them a lot more effectively. Now, if you want to call that unsportsmanlike, because you might be hooking a lot of fish outside of the mouth.
Well, it's the same as the Megabass.
It's just exactly right.
Yeah,
So I'm saying,
I think you just click share on that.
yeah.
There you
But
go.
that little jig head right there, and I love the way they have the collar on it, because you can
Mhm.
tie some skirt material on that if you want. But you can play with that jig a lot. You're seeing manufacturers really adjust to some of these light line techniques. So what once was just an old school ball headed jig is now getting little features
For $8 a pack.
Yeah,
too, for
exactly.
a ball
Yeah,
head jig.
yeah.
But I
And
mean,
we
the
got-
thing is, when you're down there and you're that deep and you're finesse fishing, like you need a quality light wire hook that's absolutely
a sticker that's
yeah.
that's going to grab them, because that out barb's dangerous. For all you know, why most manufacturers don't do that all the time. If you get that in your hand, you can't do the braid trick, by the way.
No,
you're going to the
it's
hospital.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
you
yeah.
get that out barb in your hand, you're getting surgery.
I'd heard that with EWGs too,
yeah,
but then
yeah.
I watched Kevin rip that like 1/3X EWG out of his palm at Toledo Bend, and I was like, oh, I guess it works with the
For sure.
mustad.
Yeah, if you just get it under the surface or just in the top layer of your skin, then
And that's like the most
rip it out.
The only thing we use it for is jerk baits, where all you're doing is every fish you're like, oh, made it through that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever seen one? Have you ever seen an outbarb in a?
I haven't personally. I take that back. I was lying. I did see a friend of mine get it in his calf, and it was just under the skin enough that the braid trick wasn't working. But we did the whole push it back through the other way and pull it out. I had to cut it and push it back through the other way.
I do know one.
Yeah.
I do know one guy who said he yanked a outbarb.
Yeah.
But he had to, instead
Back
of
out.
pushing the hook,
or
instead of pulling the hook down so it's flush with you in your hand, you push it the other way
For
and
sure.
then pull it so
It's going out.
you have to do it the opposite.
You have
It
to.
makes sense. From what I've heard, if that thing goes straight in you and those hooks are so sharp and fine wire that if they go in and they're down in the meat, below your skin level, you're going to go get to the doctor. But if you think about it, in the fact that what that jig's designed for is, let's say there's offshore pressured fish that you're the guy figuring out how to get them to bite on some little 2-inch, 3-inch hand poured worm or something like that. Every one of those bites is going to count, and you want them in the boat. And that's why you would go with something as dangerous as an out barb on a single hook. So,
Sean said his wife put a treble hook through their husky's ear.
ooh,
But it went all the way through. Huskies probably don't sit very still for that.
yeah, I
The
wouldn't think
Huskies
so.
that
Could have been good.
There's one question I wanted to ask you. Obviously, there's a massive push with Ben Milliken fishing the opens this year.
Oh yeah.
And he's a Sixth Sense guy. He pushes that a lot. He works a lot on that. But we've talked about relating tournament wins and success to sales on the consumer side.
Yep.
Is there any way to track when these big quote unquote influencers drop videos? Do you see a spike, like a correlation? Like, let's say Ben drops a video on X. Does that translate to Omnia? And all the other, like everywhere, just a random Tuesday drop video.
Yep. We'll usually have to track it back down and find where it came from if we're not on it. And we
Okay,
didn't
so
see
you
it.
can look and walk in and be like, okay, why are we selling
Exactly.
75 packs?
We have
of-
people that work here that are going to call that out to me and say, like, what happened here? And then we'll go try and figure it out why there was a spike. But for us being, a scaling operation, it's usually, it's a good and bad thing, right? It's good in the sense that obviously people found us, they sold the baits out real fast, but then it makes us reactive to try and get our hands on more of it. Because, for example, the panorama, right? Like that thing, we put it in, and then there was content that Luke had created and people here that was scheduled to go out that day.
That's that
Yep.
weird looking.
Yep. But we put that thing in the morning, and literally later that morning, it was content. Content was scheduled to go out, and it went before any of the content went out. Yeah. And now they're telling us middle of November, I think it is, before we'll get more of them.
Oh wow.
So that's just something that we all have to do as an industry a better job of communicating with each other, and we know something's gonna be big. Now, in defense of Sixth Sense, I believe they told us this thing was gonna be a home run because people were catching it on it. But of course, We don't know 100% know that. We did buy a lot more than we normally would because we trust those guys' opinions. But when we got them in, they went so fast. And when we track it back, we could see that it had been talked about by your influencers and it had been built up, and they just went like crazy.
Yeah, there was a lot of good hype on that bait and on his YouTube channels and multiple guys' YouTube channels.
Yep. So if you think about that, that's untraditional marketing for the fishing industry. That's clearly traditional marketing in today's world, but it wasn't a big ICAST thing. It wasn't written up in a million magazines ahead of time and advertised all over all this. That was straight up YouTube influencers that drove that thing to be one of the hottest baits now in the industry.
All right. Like, do you guys have a list of who the most, in your opinion, like influential YouTube guys are? Like, do you track back and it always goes back to like Tactical Bassin? Or,
Tactical Bassin is,
I mean, like in your mind, and listen, you're going to leave some people out. This is a subjective list that I am asking for. Do not email Pete if you're an influencer who gets left off the list.
Email Trevor, though.
Email Trevor.
Trevor. I'll put his home phone number up here.
But who would you say right now
Cell phone.
are the biggest movers of product in the industry that people who watch BTL and just follow tournaments go, who the hell is this guy and why are people buying stuff he's using?
So there's a certain way you got to look at that, right? That's a great question. But there's more than just tournament bass fishing or like trophy bass fishing, right? If you look at that realm, there's no question Milliken, Josh Jones, all those guys are just absolutely crushing right now. Tactical Bassin's one of the biggest affiliate players out there, period. For us and the data we do, honestly, because of the breadth of the industry that they cover, it's Wired to Fish does an incredible job with that stuff. They do a lot more deeper dives into durables like rods and reels, electronics, things of that nature. So if you look at the revenue that can come out of something like that.
So an article drops on Wired to Fish that talks about this rod, this reel, why it's good this time of the year.
Yep.
You can actually trace that to
they can link it right to us. That's
on
obviously
Omnia.
the easy stuff when they link it directly to us, so we see that attribution right away. But we can also run it down and see where it's all coming from as well. The lenders do a lot for us, but then again, you're looking at different revenue or different portions of the industry. Like
that's
different numbers. I do believe, and I'm a nerd in this sense, that, you know, being the fact that I pine for the days of multi-species angling and destination angling, you know, the influence of that's going to get bigger as the parts of the industry outside of the tournament bass fishing world start getting more committed to the YouTube world. And get more committed to what is that?
So Pete loves punch fishing.
There's a whole bunch of different options, or a lot of green grass out there in front of the multi-species YouTube players because they haven't played in it as much as the bass fishing.
Yeah, it is. It doesn't seem like. I mean, Guggen a little bit when they started were real multi-species. And I think John B does a lot of like trips for, but those are like
I've seen Alex
Amazon
Parrick doing a lot of stuff like that, and that has absolutely made a difference. And I think there's a lot of hunger out there for that kind of content. So I think you're going to see multi-species stuff get up there too. But right now, I mean, just for a shop that's got 30,000 bass fishing SKUs in it right behind us here, your Millikens, Josh Joneses, Tactical Bass, and
so big bass guys.
Yeah, big bass,
like
guys,
serious big bass guys. So have you noticed over the last couple of years the pond, small time challenge YouTube channels and stuff aren't as?
We're seeing the traffic there.
Yeah.
The bait sales for us that are, because our assortment so refined for your tournament angler currently, it's more your tournament guys, even like Castledine stuff. Like you start looking at pockets regionally around the country where people are doing tournament recaps and things like that. That's done really well. Trevor mentioned like Hellabass and punch fishing and all that stuff. Those guys crush it for us when it comes to tackle reviews on high-end stuff, or Hellabass more in like the tournament, like fish catching stuff, what's working in tournaments.
Oh, punch fishing the channel, not like punching grass.
No.
That's what
he. But like tackle reviews for high-end stuff do really well too.
I was like, that was an interesting note. Like, congratulations. Who doesn't like punching up a nice 5-pounder out of the slough?
Exactly. But yeah, I think a lot of the anglers miss that opportunity that are trying to get into YouTube, that are tournament anglers, of doing recaps of their tournaments and linking out the products and working
Is
with
that
it. They don't want to do one. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as it sounds. It's a lot of work.
So the last show I did with you guys, I went through it. I licked every single product that we talked about in that show.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, dear God.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I need an intern.
Yeah, I know. It's not easy. A lot of people talk big that they want to do it. They want to be an affiliate, but the affiliates that do really well at it, it's a full-on commitment, and it's hard. It's tedious work, but it will pay off.
Like anybody on your radar that
I think Pete mentioned most of the big time ones that are really popular right now, but just a side tangent of that, of why that's happening. I think just the saturation of what has happened over YouTube. And you mentioned those videos, like the pond hopping videos. I think there was just so much of that, but now the new content, guys catching 15 pounders in Texas and showing a screencast of their live scope. That's just a whole new content for people to view. And then if they try to sell you something in that video, that's why I think it's
it has
driving.
to be easier to sell stuff that's got a 12 or 15 pound.
I mean, the Texas bass
Yeah.
is all the Texas bass that they're getting on camera.
Clay always comes to the BTL chat with the hard questions. Subjective, in your opinion, same question. Which anglers move the most product? Now, this is also Omnia, and you also have to remember, you guys are nationwide, but heavily in the north. Started in the north. We are up in Minnesota here, so this is going to vary. But just throw some names out and get in trouble.
Yeah, well, some of it can, and I don't think anybody's gonna be surprised by this one, but this is I can get the Wired to Fish guys to back me up. You can go ahead and ask. Seth is absolute hammer at moving stuff. He's got that reputation of kind of calling it how it is.
He just doesn't give a damn.
Yeah, he's gonna call out the baits that actually work. It's hard to get him. Trust me, I've tried to get him to lie a bunch. It's tough for him to do that. So Seth does move the needle quite a bit. Some of the people that are not affiliated with Omnia Fishing, but I can just tell because they move a lot of baits. Zona still has a massive influence, especially in that smallmouth world. Christy is really good. Really? Gussie's been great for us. Gussie's been really good for us. I think, we'd all be remiss not nailing Wheeler, Polinick. Polinick does a really good job with us. I mean, he put X Zone on the map for us, for sure. Trying to think of who else. You got any, Luke, off the top of your head?
What about like the older guys? What about like the Jimmy Houstons, the Bill Dances, the Roland Martins? Like, I think that whole generation. Did they?
We got in. I can tell you for a fact from my old days, and I wore a brown shirt and worked at a big giant box store, and I worked at that company.
Oh, you were a UPS guy?
Yeah, I was a UPS guy.
Have we had this talk?
No. I was
Jeffrey's worked at UPS for 25 years.
I was a Cabela's guy.
Oh, Cabela's. Yeah. I thought, well, that describes
it's a big
UPS.
ass box store.
Does it not? Does that not describe?
I didn't know
that's what I thought he was going.
Oh, box store. I get it now. All right. No, I was a Cabela's guy. I watched their influence was immense. The Allenders, Jimmy Houstons, Bill Dance, Dancing Eels, all that stuff. But we would sell the fire out of that stuff, and they had massive influence. By the time we started this thing, I remember Omnia is basically in retail, not even 4 years old yet. We were chasing down more tournament anglers to get the ball rolling, and hardcore bass anglers. So it wasn't that those guys weren't great tournament fishermen, but they haven't been chasing down trends and kicking
a lot of those
baits.
People who are buying those baits aren't coming to Omnia for those because they're just your old school stuff.
Yeah, it's and we should have more of that stuff. It's just what we had to focus in on, and what we spent our budgets on was stuff that we thought was going to win a tournament in the Northeast on smallmouth, and what was catching spotted bass on Hartwell and that kind of stuff. We looked at it regionally that way because of our Shop by Lake feature. It was all about stuff that was catching fish currently right now for your hardcore.
Can you pull that up, Trevor? The Shop by Lakes stuff. So like when you go to Omnia, this is one of the cool things that I liked. About it. When you go to the Omnia site, I really need to get a second person. This is the greatest thing ever. And then you scroll down, you can click on that and show some of that stuff.
So all those pins, the ones that have orange pins on them, are lakes that are super active as far as like we're getting fishing reports in from them a lot. The other pins you'll see on there, some of them will have a few fishing reports, but they're not as active. But we'll actually tell you the techniques that are being reported the most, the species that are being reported the most. We have, as we've talked about Premium Pro before, water clarity, temperatures, That temperature is updated about every 3 days. We got wind direction on it now, as you see where the wind's blowing. So right now we got
working on that last time you were on.
Yeah. So as you see there, that's what I'm going to be doing this afternoon, actually, is doing a little testing with this and looking at some new features. And
scroll back up there. Is that showing
the wind direction?
No, the color on the lake, is that showing what baits are working in what part, or is that the water temperature?
That's actually
feature?
water temperature.
temp feature.
Yeah, just showing you where we're getting, where the warmest water's at currently. As you see, my gut is that by the end of today, that warmer water will be up towards the north end a little bit more and all that with where the wind's blowing. And so you can kind of plan out and do a little bit of research before you go to a body of water. Baits that are working on the body of water, top reported stuff, most recently reported stuff, things of that nature. So hence why we didn't really get to chase.
Scroll back up there. I'm curious. Sorry.
Just the most heavily marketed stuff. It was a lot of stuff that was being reported and fished by people.
Okay, I was just seeing how much of that is like that I would say would be forward-facing sonar stuff.
Yeah.
And there's still some traditional stuff in there.
Oh, that absolutely is.
You got a jig, you got a lot of Ned stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You got the war pig. Someone's just going out there and just trapping up the smallies. The dark sleeper. So that was a bait that came out like on fire. I remember everyone had to have the dark sleeper. Then it was like, you got to trim the fin on the top to increase it. And then it was like, hey, this is going to replace the finesse jig. Then it was like, hey, you can catch them suspended on docks on it. Then it was like, it's an awesome bed fish. Then you could drag it like a tube.
Yep.
The fire around that seemed to died a little bit.
I think, a bunch of manufacturers came out with similar baits to it. So I think it spread it out a little bit.
Yeah.
I will tell you, there are pockets of the country where it's still an absolute staple. Like for a chartreuse jigworm up in Minnesota, that dark sleeper on some portions of the Great Lakes is just as prevalent. You know, it's like a red trap on Sam Rayburn kind of thing. So it's kind of like you said, nationwide, the thing was on fire, and now it's landed in its pockets. So it's just like a steady mover in certain regions of the country.
Could I ask you another question that you probably don't want to answer?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a dark sleeper.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll just use the most common one. Berkeley came out with the
Agony. Yep.
And you've got all these style of baits. What does that do to the original? Obviously the original would be Andre Moore with the Sweet Beaver.
Correct.
The Zoom Brush Hog.
Yep.
The Yamamoto Cinco.
Yep.
If we're going to go back and
here's the thing. If it's a hardcore, if it's a fish catcher, right? And I mean that. Like it can't be like it's pretty good. If it's a fish catcher, it actually helps it. Believe that or not, it will help the original.
Yep.
Like Magdraft went from being really popular to when everybody started making something like a Magdraft, it just would go and go. Because I think
the more that are available, the more the Magdraft sold.
Yes, because I think what happened is the more confident people got fishing that style of bait, they ended up landing back on the one that was, producing the best. I think as bass fishermen, we do that, right? Like it's just like Senkos, right?
Yeah.
Every time somebody would come out with a cheaper, more durable version of a Senko, I would go buy a lot of those things. And then I'd end up buying more green pumpkin Senkos, the originals, because it just outperformed them. So, that I think that if it's a pure fish catcher and good for everybody, now it can work the opposite way if it's just an okay bait and someone obviously beats it and comes out with a better fish producer.
And there's been companies that have been like, hey, let's take our pros, take a bait that works, get them in the lab and say, how do we make this thing better? Like obviously better. Typically it's in like ease of fishing, hanging up with the hook, something of that durability, something of that nature.
That's absolutely the way it is.
Real quick there. Is that the screen that we're sharing right now? Trevor. Okay. So this is a little trick. If you want to know what actually sells and catches fish, it's the stuff that is carried in the most colors.
Yeah, that's very true. If you think about it, now I can argue you on that in the sense of things change, the tackle trends change. And remember what I was talking about with crankbaits?
Well,
I may have
soft plastics.
Soft plastics, I would say 100%.
Soft plastics.
Yes,
like if you are looking for a bait in soft plastics and there's 4, 6, or 8 colors. And then the one that's similar that has 36 colors
for sure. But like Great Lakes finesse, right? Like they're gonna have to have 20 more colors soon. That stuff sells so well, so they don't have a huge array just yet. But it's a new company, but you'll see them expanding in colors and all that. But your traditional stuff, like you said, a Yamamoto Senko or a Berkeley Power Worm in 7-inch, to your point, that those are staple baits that you have. There's a billion colors of because they work all over the country in all sorts of different conditions and different types of bodies of water.
You mentioned this 7-inch power worm. It was interesting when we were talking about the forward-facing sonar. There was a comment on there that talked about the 6-inch robo worm on the drop shot.
Yeah.
In 5 years, that very well may be the 7-inch power worm with the lead, the true turn hook, and a bit off toothpick in it. And we'll all be like, remember when we just fished with these things with a 6-inch robo worm and a drop shot?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's old school. That's old school now. That's literally old school.
Yeah.
That went from like cutting edge to old school in about 3 years.
That's very true. That's very, very true.
And it went from I fish it because no one sees it to I don't fish it because everyone sees it. Every fish sees it.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
All right, we need to talk about the St. Jude.
Yeah.
What I'm actually up here for the Dick Hiley St. Jude Bass Classic. We had Gretchen on yesterday morning, which is why I pulled the long road trip and made it just in time while we were 2 minutes late. You guys have a lot of vehicles up here. A lot of traffic.
A lot of traffic.
The 25th annual raised over $1 million this year for St. Jude after raising, I think, it's like 776 last year, just shy of 7 million total in the 25-year history. Have you ever fished it before?
I have not fished it.
You
No.
fished it multiple times.
Yep.
Kind of explain. I've talked about it a little bit. Kind of explain up here how important that tournament is kind of to this region. Not only the giving back and the donation, but also just like the prestige of that tournament. It's considered one of the bigger tournaments in Minnesota.
It is. I mean, so we're fishing it in the fall this year. Usually it's the first week of May, which is kind of like the first big tournament in the Midwest, I'd say, between Wisconsin and Minnesota. So all the anglers, local anglers, and guys from around the country are excited for that one. Yeah. But just the cause that it's for the children at the Children's Hospital, raising money for that, bringing all the tournament anglers together for a better cause is just, I mean, like you said, it's been going on for such a long time. It's a prestigious event. And I would say arguably one of the biggest ones up in the Midwest.
I was just going to say, because of our lack of major tournaments and we don't have any major trails up in this part of the country, I shouldn't say no, none. We are growing that. I know, like, there's the Champions Tour. Denny's has always had a soft spot for most of us Midwesterners, just because it's produced a lot of the Elite Series anglers and FLW guys and things of that nature. But as far as prestigious nationwide covered tournaments, St. Jude is right up there on the list as one of the biggest tournaments we have up in the Midwest for sure.
It is. So it's October 7th and 8th. You can follow all the updates I just type in Dick Hiley St. Jude Bass Classic and the website pops up. Otherwise, it's like stjude.org/Dick Hiley Bass Classic or something of that.
Well,
nature.
I know both of you are fishing it. So there was talk ahead of time that there would be some sort of challenge between the two of you. Yeah. And this morning, as you arrived and came in, there was already both participants were backing up away from the challenge. I want to know the details of what was the original premise of the challenge and who started this challenge.
Well, we both fished this tournament last year. That kind of started last year.
Okay.
So
there was just some friendly jabbing back and forth?
A little bit.
Okay.
And now we want to put some stakes on it potentially.
Okay.
To see who could finish the highest in the tournament.
Yes. And so the original idea was
the one chip challenge.
I feel like that's so 2001 though.
It still would be really fun to watch. I'm just saying for everybody watching out there.
I will say this live on air. I am relying 100% on Adam Bartuzek for our results in this event. Like, my job is to cast and catch here, not to locate, find, and assess.
And I will say, I'll back you up. I have heard the same thing, that people are dying from the chip challenge. So,
and I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying, I'm putting my life in the hands of another man here when it comes to the one chip challenge. Now, I have full confidence in Adam. We had a good event last year. Yep. And he's assured me, he even texted me just now, he wants a specific type of hook. He wants me to see if they have a specific type of hook that we could swap out for a specific type of bait that he plans on mauling them on.
Okay.
This week.
All
so
right.
I have to get with you after that. I will not show you.
Can help you out there. All right.
Because I don't want to give it away. But I mean, have you ever done the one chip challenge?
I have not.
Luke, by the way, pointed out to me that he thinks pepper is hot. So
that is correct. So I do not eat hot food. If I have to do this, it could be ugly. So
Well, what I'm saying is I understand, since we did learn that they're even hard to get the chips now.
Mm-hmm.
So can we just land on something else?
Okay.
I mean, we could open it up to.
Okay. So
I'm fine with the one chip challenge. I would be interested to hear what people say we should put on the line.
Can't we like put a box of fine meats from like Omaha Steaks or
More
something?
delicious items?
Yeah, like hey, like you gotta. But one of the elements that we are doing we're doing $100 donation to next year's team.
Yes.
Hopefully,
team,
I won't be able to fish it next year because I'm fishing the opens.
Oh yeah.
And that would mean that I'm still in it. But I will if I go throw a stinker up on the board.
Then you'll come back.
Yeah, I'll dump an open to fish it. Oh, so, okay. Yeah,
Must
friendly
answer
rivalry
5.
with Luke and Panger. Highest finisher, one chip challenge. Loser eats it during the next guest spot.
And has to answer 5
And
questions.
must answer 5 questions after eating the chip.
Wow.
That's a lot,
That is a lot.
especially if they're in-depth questions.
Well, we need to hear from the
fine,
listeners here.
Unless there's something else that one of the listeners.
That's
Yeah.
safer. Try those hot peanuts.
Like peanuts.
5 levels of insanity.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do something that would be uncomfortable. Maybe it would be like bear mace and then the 5 questions.
Okay. I mean, that's probably the same level of the one chip.
That would really incentivize you.
Well, we'll land on something. I just had to bring that up because I was excited when I heard about it, and I needed to know who came up with this whole.
Shave your heads.
Nah, I mean I'm pushing
we do
40 and I still have a head of hair. I don't want to go for
Hey.
6 months without it. I'm sure that's going soon enough.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask you guys about that Easton.
I was
Eastern
hoping we bring him
Fothergill.
Fothergill. Yeah. Congrats. Easton.
Congrats, Easton.
He's from this neck of the woods.
Yes,
isn't
he
he?
is. He's from a little north of here, but yes, he is definitely proudly representing Minnesota right now. So
Very.
great job, Easton. And the other Minnesota angler who made the classic through the same route is sitting to our right here,
Yeah.
Trevor. So
Trevor, do you want to come in and
Yeah.
talk about Easton, like what he's about
Here.
to go through?
you can steal my spot.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
But
everybody.
then you have to go back and finish the show because I can't click it.
I can give a little backstory on Easton, just
Okay,
about
yeah,
what he's
hit it.
kind of been through. I mean, I don't know the whole story, but more than a few weeks back, he had brain surgery. So just to be able to overcome that and even fish this tournament is amazing. I know pretty much everyone in Minnesota and a lot of people across the country were pulling for him, and he wrote an amazing story for winning this event. And just the adversity he had to come through in order to win is very impressive. So it's a huge congratulations.
Talking about the College Classic bracket where they take the top 4 teams from the national championship. They pit them against each other in bracket style. They fish it all the way down. They picked it was a very sadistic thing that they did. They picked Milford Lake in Kansas.
Yeah.
Which is not the easiest fishery to catch a bass on or get to. But that's neither here nor there.
Honestly, I think that lake's probably a little bit better than Dubay when we fish.
Yeah, so you've been through this exact experience, what they saw. So it came down to Tucker Smith and Easton, and it was right at the end. Tucker had the lead, then Easton caught a couple, then he caught a couple big ones at the end. He's in the Bassmaster Classic. He gets to fish, gets $7,500. He gets to fish the Bassmaster Opens, all 9 of the EQs. It's a hell of a deal.
Yeah, it's super cool. Like I said, being the first college kid from Minnesota to win it back in 2015. Now we've got another one in this year, 2023. And I think the cherry on top is he's actually fishing the Classic where I fished the Classic as well.
Oh
in
yeah,
Tulsa.
he is.
So hoping, I'm pulling for him. When I fished the Classic, I didn't catch a fish, but I mean, still had a great time. And hopefully he can put one on.
What is the pressure like looking back on that, going into like a final day of a bracket? How old were you at the time?
I think it was 21.
Yeah, he's like what, 19 or something like that?
He's a junior.
Yeah,
so.
19, 20 years old, to like go out and know like, okay, I'm on this deal. And it wasn't easy where you were, and you're like, hey, if I just get a couple bites, I'm
Right.
in the capital THE Bassmaster Classic.
Yeah. At the time I was so fresh and young into my tournament fishing career, I guess you could say. When I won that tournament, I think it was like maybe the 9th tournament I had fished in my life. So for me personally, the pressure wasn't extremely high in the sense of, obviously you want to do well, but considering that it's the 9th tournament of your career ever, there's kind of a little bit of
naivety.
Yeah, or even just understanding like, hey, go and do your best, and if you come up short, you put everything out there. But it's a little different nowadays because these kids are coming up from the juniors, and then they're fishing the high school, and then now they're fishing in the college series. And there's so many new platforms for these anglers to get involved in at such an early age that I feel like there's potentially more pressure on them. There's more live coverage now. You've got more eyeballs on you, and I think as the sport continues to grow, that platform gets bigger and bigger. And as these guys are fishing in the college series for years to come, I think that's where you're going to have a little bit more pressure on them. But I'm super excited for Easton. I think he's gonna kill it. I mean, he does well up here in Minnesota. He just proved to the world that he can hold his own against the rest of the guys around the country. And generally speaking, we think of Southern guys being from the North. We think of the Southern guys like they get to fish year round.
Yeah.
They got such an edge on us Northern boys. But I think he's going to go and show the world that the Northern boys can hang too.
Can I pick up the mask?
Let's just. He also won Team of the Year this year in the college circuit. So, he's been catching them across the entire country.
I've heard he's a really good angler.
Very good,
really
angler.
nice guy. I mean, he was going up against the Michael Jordan of high school and college fishing in Tucker Smith. That guy literally has a trophy case, and he's 20 years old.
Yep, absolutely.
So I mean, it's great for him. I mean, I'm sure Tucker's not thrilled not being in the Classic. I have a sneaking suspicion he might be in a few Classics in his day. So
probably.
Yeah, he'll be there.
He'll survive in advance.
Yeah. He'll make
Can I pick up the helmet?
Absolutely.
This is we talk about this on the show. I've talked about it before too, but this is the actual Iron Man helmet that you wore.
Oh, it turns on too.
How old is that battery?
It's been
the Iron Man mask that you wore in the Classic. Oh yeah, you really can't see out of that.
No, it's you put it on for takeoff, and as soon as it blast off,
all show, no go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a very it's a driving hazard for sure.
But that's cool to know that was in the Bassmaster Classic.
Absolutely.
And you get to look at it every day.
Yeah, it's the wallpaper on my computer and everything like that. I've got this sick takeoff picture. You got some fog because it was freezing cold, and then me behind the dash with the mask.
Anything else we wanted to make sure we got in here before we'll bring Pete back in then and close her out, and I'll actually get a tour. I walked in, the show started at 8:31, and I walked in at 8:27, and you were like, "Hey, let me give you a quick tour." I was like, or
we'll just go live right now.
Just go straight to where we're gonna shoot this.
Yeah.
So I haven't gotten to see any of the facility yet.
Yeah. We'll get you a good tour. Right. So, Polish Pete, you ready?
Can I also get an Omnia hat? You think that could be possible? I'm still hatless. I like that hat. It's kind of got some OU colors to it.
That's the St. Jude hat.
St. Jude hat. We sold this hat for a fundraiser for St. Jude, so the proceeds went to St. Jude.
Yeah. Yep. For your team?
That undiscussed
team.
Undisclosed.
Undisclosed. I can't believe that they did over $1 million. I mean, I can believe when you
wasn't that more than the golfers did?
I don't know.
I wanted to say that was the goal, was to beat the golfers, and because obviously there's much more money in the golf side of things.
Like the PGA, the St. Jude, invitation.
Don't quote me on it, but I thought I heard it was they were somewhere around at 750, 800,000, and the bass fishing bums raised $1 million. So good.
That's cool. We'll work on it for next year. Hopefully have 2 events, one in Oklahoma and one in Minnesota. Big shout out. We had that at Giesenbrauer Beer Company.
Yeah.
Giesenbräu.
It ticks Adam off I can't remember the name of how to say it. I was close this time. Giesenbräu. He had the Crappie Chronicle guys, and there were tons of people who came out.
Nice.
For your fundraiser event.
Yeah. Jim, we'll do a full kind of EQ show that kind of breaks down my year and what's next year's going to look like next year when I get back in studio. Also, next week, Mike Iaconelli, fresh off of his Hall of Fame induction, will be on BTL, and then we will be live tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. Following our first day of practice at the Jude, and then we have I am trying to score free stuff, Don, and then we'll have a regularly scheduled day 4 with Frank. We actually did the show on I'll give it away. Tiny Baits Big Bass, which is a very in fisherman type article
Mhm.
that we turned into a show. But, a bunch of little stuff that you can use, especially this time of the year, 0.5s, 0.7s, 1.0s, little bitty Ned stuff, tiny pop-ars, spoons, that type of stuff to catch big bass. So that'll be on Thursday.
Baits,
And then the tournament's Saturday and Sunday.
Yep.
And there's I'm going to some deal on Thursday night with Adam, some clam deal.
Oh, the Clam Pro Day. I saw them starting to smoke meats for that. I saw that.
So it's going to be a lot of meat and beer, I would imagine, which is ice fishing.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I'm going to go to an ice fishing deal, and Adam's like, oh, yeah, you can roll it. I was like, no one at ice fishing knows. Like, I'm just going to be a random guy walking around going, what's this for? What's this for? What's this for?
It's for practicing for live scope.
Yeah.
So we're doing that, and then Friday there's a dinner, and then Saturday's the
Derby.
Well, yes, the Derby, and then there's also the ceremony at night. Fat Cat Noon flies in.
That's cool.
Does that whole thing. So, anything else you guys want to get in here?
Nothing much. Keep an eye out for more updates and more features coming on Premium Pro. There's a really big one coming here soon that we're pretty excited about.
Okay.
The brass here at Omnia has a meeting on Wednesday before we can officially announce it, but you can see some hints of what that is if you go and look at the features of Premium Pro right now and what map layers can be unlocked soon.
Okay.
I'll be out on the water here today testing some of that stuff. So
you're actually going fishing?
I'm not. I hope to fish. Most of it's going to be.
Did you stay off the water to do this first thing? Like,
Yeah,
are you missing on the water time right now?
We're
Oh,
going to be
appreciate
meeting
that,
up the
Pete.
developers here in a little while.
Wow,
so.
that's a yellow jacket on the table.
Yes, it is.
Hold on.
I thought bees were extinct, but we found out where they
Is
are.
I think there's a BTL discount code.
Yes, there is. There's a BTL discount code. Trevor, do you know what that is?
Is that BTL 23?
BTL 23.
I don't know if you go over to banners on the side, there might be an Omnia banner that we could throw up there before we end. BTL banner 7. Click on that. Sunline Pro Guide. Is there an Omnia one? Yeah,
There it is. Yeah,
15% off your
BTL
first
23.
Purchase, capital BTL 23 at OmniaFishing.com.
Well, keep an eye out. We got all the iCast stuff too starting to roll in. Each week we've had a
What's
whole
the
bunch
thing you're
of
most excited about? For
Ah,
MyCast.
there's I'm trying to think of what we got rolling in now. We have a bunch of the new Strike King and Lose stuff that's on the way right now that I think will do really well. That new Hyper Mag, a lot of people have been talking about that thing. That'll be real popular. There's some stuff still to come from Daiwa, I believe. That should be a real big launch for us. Some of that stuff, but there's too much to talk about. There's a ton of it.
To get to that page, omniafishing.com/Bass Talk Live. Spell it out. Oh, just BTL. Never mind.
BTL
You
23.
don't even have to
Yeah.
spell it out. BTL 23. Well, I greatly appreciate the invitation. I'm glad we're able to work this out.
Oh yeah.
And I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the building and good luck on the water during the test and hopefully get to catch some. And then I look forward to hopefully beating you
Yeah.
this week in the St. Jude and then having you come on. I think if there is a listener or viewer of the show that has, like, don't just Google hottest hot sauce in the world, but if you have one that like has significance to you, that's like maybe from your hometown, someone makes it that you know
The
that
homemade.
that might be like a level 2 or 3.
Well, I'm feeling okay. I mean,
That's what I was saying. Let me know. And if you're willing to send it, then we could use that hot sauce on air.
I mean, you'll be fine with the one chip.
Ooh.
You seem confident. Are you a Fall River guy?
I don't know. I'm just excited to get down there. We're gonna figure it
That's
out.
a yes or no question. Are you a Fall River guy?
My partner is a Fall River guy.
I guess my partner claims to be a Fall River guy too.
Well, you're gonna find out here pretty quick.
Who are you fishing with?
I'm fishing with my uncle,
What's your uncle's name?
John.
Oh, I think Bart said he was ridiculously good.
Well, we did well against you last year, so
Yeah, but that was in the spring,
This will be interesting.
and
I'm
I
excited
refused
for
to
it.
fish current.
All right.
So
Oh,
that
boy.
was a
Well.
bad decision. And Bart was like, "Fine, we won't fish current just so you're comfortable." I mean, that's what happened. And then
well, we're
I
going
caught
to
it-
a river. So
Then I caught it like a 580 smallmouth.
Did you really?
Yeah,
Yeah, he had a
or-
huge one on
yeah,
day one.
massive. It hit like from me to you.
Yeah.
Went shoom, shoom, shoom. On the third one, he got the net under it. Bait goes flying out. He just looks at it and he's like, my God. He's like, that's a unicorn.
Yeah, that is a unicorn.
So, yeah, hit the like button on this if you're listening on YouTube. Like I said last time, getting towards the end of the year, if you're watching on YouTube, you have to get a Google account. Like it took me probably a year to figure out why I couldn't like YouTube videos was because I hadn't created a Google account. And then you get it, and then you can actually like organize everything and do your music and all that. So it's worth it. If that's not your jam, have your wife do it to sign up, and then you can follow and subscribe. And then on iTunes, always we're up over 2,000 comments and reviews. Leave a comment, review if you haven't done so on the show. Greatly appreciate it. Pete, Luke, Trevor, thank you very much for having me in studio and letting me use the Omnia facilities, and looking forward to kicking off a fun week.
Absolutely.
Thanks for all your support of the St. Jude, and thanks to all the BTL listener support of Omnia. We're growing this thing pretty fast thanks to a lot of your help. So thank you.
Good stuff. You can hit the end stream there. See you guys.
See ya.
Later.